1937. Strangers knock on a farmhouse door on the far northeastern edge of the Tibetan world, a village called Taktser. They call themselves traders. They ask for tea and a night's shelter. Every detail of the visit is staged. The man dressed as a servant leads the party. He is a senior lama from Sera Monastery near Lhasa, and he has come all this way to watch one child. A 2-year-old boy stares at him from across the room. Then the toddler calls him by a name no one expected him to know. Sera Lama, Sera Lama. The stranger's monastery, a place this child has never seen, months of travel away. Days later, the strangers return, openly this time. They carry possessions of the 13th Dalai Lama, who died before this boy was born, mixed among convincing replicas. The child reaches past every copy and closes his hand around a rosary that belonged to the dead man. It's mine. It's mine. The visitors believe this toddler is someone Tibet has known before, someone Tibet believed had returned, life after life, for 6 centuries, and someone older still. A being Tibetans say has watched over their country since before it had a name. The world would come to know this boy as the Dalai Lama. Tibet knew him as something else. This is the story of Chenrezig. "1,500 years before that farmhouse, India. Mahayana tradition tells of a being who made a vow with no finish line. He would personally free every creature that suffers, every human, every animal, every being trapped in samsara, the endless cycle of birth and death. Texts like the Lotus Sutra describe him hearing the cries of the world and answering them. Centuries later, Tibetan legend gave that compassion a harder edge, a vow so absolute that breaking it would shatter his body. If I ever abandon a single being, may I break into pieces. His name was Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion. The legend says he opened his awareness to the world, completely, and heard all of it at once. Every cry from every realm. The scale of it overwhelmed him. And in that moment of despair, his own vow came due. His head shattered. The Buddha Amitabha appeared in the wreckage and turned the collapse into capacity. He restored him with 11 faces, able to look in every direction at once. And when Avalokiteshvara reached toward every sufferer at the same moment, his arms broke apart too, so Amitabha gave him 1,000. If that story sounds familiar, good. We told it in full in our Guanyin video, link in the corner. But notice the detail most tellings skip. He broke twice, the head first, from witnessing, then the arms, from reaching. And each time what came back could do more. That is this legend's answer to despair. More eyes, more hands. But the 1,000-armed figure is compassion at emergency scale. The form most Tibetans keep on their shrines is calmer, white as mountain snow, 4 arms, a face at perfect peace. One pair of hands presses a jewel to his heart, the wish itself, may every being be free. The other pair holds a crystal rosary and a white lotus, beings counted out of suffering, purity rising out of the mud. The name itself kept changing as it traveled, and each version tells you what its speakers believed compassion actually is. Some of the oldest surviving manuscripts preserve an early form with a specific meaning, the one who perceives sounds, the cries of the world. One influential Chinese translation kept that idea alive, Guanyin, the perceiver of sounds. The Sanskrit name that later generations carried, Avalokiteshvara, shifted the meaning, the Lord who gazes down. And Tibet gave him a third name, Chenrezig, traditionally understood as the one who looks with an unwavering eye, the one who never stops looking. China heard him, Tibet watched with him. That Tibetan name reads like a prophecy, because a being defined by unbroken watching was about to bind himself to one land above the clouds, permanently. In China, this being became a goddess, and that road has its own video. Today, we take the road over the Himalaya, where he became more than a figure people worshipped. He became the identity of a nation. Every nation tells a story about where its people come from. Rome nursed its founders on a wolf. Tibet's founding story is wilder. According to the Mani Kambum, a beloved collection of Tibetan texts, the first Tibetans were the children of a monkey, and the monkey was Chenrezig in disguise. The story goes like this. Chenrezig sent an emanation of himself into the empty highlands, in the form of a monkey seated in meditation on a mountain. Then a rock ogress found him, a demoness of the mountains, wild, lonely, and desperate for a mate. She circled his meditation seat. She wept. She threatened to give herself to the demons instead and fill Tibet with a race of monsters. The monkey faced a dilemma worthy of the Bodhisattva he was. Keep his vows of solitude and doom the land to darkness, or break his retreat, marry a demoness, and become the father of a people. He chose her. From their union, the old texts say, came 6 children, and from those 6, the earliest Tibetan clans, restless like their mother, compassionate like their father. Quick note for longtime viewers, different monkey. The one who fought Buddha got a whole trilogy on this channel. This one founded a country. Myths tell you what a people believe about themselves. History shows what they built on it. 7th century. A king rises in the Yarlung Valley, Songtsen Gampo, the emperor traditionally credited with giving Buddhism its first royal foothold in Tibet. Temples in Lhasa, foreign queens arriving with statues of the Buddha. And when later Tibetan histories looked back at him, they made a remarkable claim. The emperor himself had been Chenrezig, emanated onto a throne. A century on, the tantric master Padmasambhava would help root the teaching far deeper. And in one beloved account, even Tara, the swift green goddess of protection, began as a single tear that Chenrezig wept over the suffering of beings. From his grief, a savior with her own vow. Ancestor, emperor, goddess. Later Tibetan histories linked all three to Chenrezig. Thread by thread, a civilization wove itself around one being. And then, over centuries, Tibetans carried his presence into the landscape itself. 6 syllables. Om Mani Padme Hum. Chenrezig's own mantra, one of Buddhism's most widely recited mantras. One of the earliest surviving texts to connect those 6 syllables with this bodhisattva is a scripture called the Karandavyuha Sutra. What the syllables actually mean has its own history. Translators have argued about it for 1,000 years. Walk through Tibet, and you find the mantra everywhere, carved into cliff faces, chiseled onto stones by the millions, mani stones, stacked into walls that run beside pilgrimage routes for miles, each stone cut by a human hand. Sealed inside prayer wheels, so that one spin of the wrist releases the syllables thousands of times. Printed on flags strung across the high passes, so that the wind itself recites it day and night, whether anyone is awake to pray or not. A nation engineered its own geography into an instrument. The rocks pray. The weather speaks his name. And notice what Tibet's origin story places inside the family line. Compassion, and the compromise compassion sometimes demands. The founding act of the whole story is Chenrezig breaking his solitude because someone was weeping outside it. From above, all of it at once, the rocks carved with his mantra, the people carrying his bloodline. You could visit 1,000 shrines to Chenrezig across this land and still miss the real one. Chenrezig doesn't have a temple in Tibet. Tibet is the temple. But a nation that belongs to a bodhisattva runs into a question sooner or later. Who governs when his human life ends? Tibet's answer would create one of Buddhism's most powerful institutions. Rome elects its next leader. Tibet went looking for the same one again. Every sacred institution faces the same problem. Leaders die, popes die, and cardinals gather to choose a new man for the office. Tibet took another path entirely. When a great master dies, search for him. The same being is returned, Tibetans say, in a new body. They call such a person a tulku. And before we go further, call Chenrezig a god, and any Tibetan will gently correct you. A bodhisattva, which is stranger. Ask what a bodhisattva is, and the vow is the answer. A being who keeps walking back into the world, on purpose, until every being is free. Tibetan teaching holds something more layered than a soul hopping between bodies. The texts describe rebirth, manifestation, emanation, related ways that awakened compassion continues its work. The 14th Dalai Lama put the purpose plainly in his 2011 statement on reincarnation. A recognized rebirth appears, in his words, to continue the predecessor's unfinished work. He has also written that an advanced bodhisattva can, in theory, emanate into a new body before the old one even dies. That possibility will matter when we reach the 15th. So how did recognition become government? First came a Mongol title. The year, 1578. The Mongol ruler Altan Khan meets a Tibetan teacher named Sonam Gyatso and gives him a new title. Dalai, the Mongolian word for ocean, a teacher whose wisdom was vast as the sea. Sonam Gyatso became known as the third Dalai Lama, and the title reached backward. 2 earlier masters were added to the lineage retrospectively, as his previous lives. Tibetans came to see the whole line as manifestations of Chenrezig, a sacred lineage, still short of a government. That changed with the 5th. 1642. After years of religious and military conflict, Nawang Lobsang Gyatso, remembered as the Great Fifth, assumes spiritual and temporal authority over much of Tibet. The figure his people identified with Chenrezig now collects taxes and commands the fate of a country. On Red Mountain above Lhasa, he begins raising a palace, 1,000 rooms, 13 stories climbing the rock face. Its name, the Potala, after Potalaca, the mythical mountain abode of Avalokiteshvara himself. The Bodhisattva of the Sutras now had an address. Then, in 1682, the Great Fifth died, and Tibet did something almost impossible to believe. His regent concealed the death. For roughly 15 years, the government maintained the fiction that the Dalai Lama had withdrawn into a long meditation retreat. Officials ruled in his name, and accounts say the court produced a stand-in, an old monk who resembled him, when visitors demanded an audience. Meanwhile, in secret, the succession was already being prepared. A child, the 6th, located and raised quietly, while the palace above him was completed in the dead man's name. 15 years. Even the Dalai Lama's death could be edited. The concealment exposed what the institution had become. Succession was now inseparable from power. Remember that. The lineage now counts 14 lives, and when the search for the 14th began, the signs pointed east, toward a farmhouse you've already seen. After the 13th Dalai Lama died, the regent traveled to the sacred lake Lamo Latso and reported a vision. 3 Tibetan letters, a monastery with a turquoise roof, a small house with strangely shaped guttering. The search parties fanned out east, toward Amdo, and one of them found a house that matched, in a village called Taktser. You watched what happened next, a toddler naming a monastery he'd never seen, then reaching past the replicas for a dead man's beads. The remaining tests convinced them the search had ended. His parents had named him Lamo Tondup. On entering monastic life, he received the name the world knows, Tenzin Gyatso, the 14th Dalai Lama. At 4 years old, he sat on a throne in Lhasa. His new home held 1,000 rooms. The palace raised 3 centuries before by the Great Fifth an earlier life, Tibet believed, of the boy now running through its corridors. And what does he make of that himself? He has answered carefully, his whole life. The question, he has said, is not simple. He does not describe it as a plain memory of 13 previous lives. He speaks instead of a spiritual connection to the earlier Dalai Lamas, to Chenrezig, and to the Buddha. Even the man at the center of the mystery holds it gently. He should have had decades to study and grow into the role. History gave him until 15. October 1950. News reaches Lhasa. The People's Liberation Army has crossed into eastern Tibet. On November 17th, with the crisis deepening, Tibet's government confers full political authority on the 15-year-old Dalai Lama, years ahead of tradition. A teenager, negotiating with Beijing's leaders while opposition to Chinese rule spread through his country. He walked that line for 9 years. Then came March 1959. Rumors swept Lhasa that the Chinese command planned to seize him. Crowds surrounded the Norbulinka, his summer palace, to shield him with their bodies. The city stood on the edge of open battle. His court consulted the Nechung oracle. The instruction was explicit: leave the country, immediately. So the Dalai Lama took off his glasses, his most recognizable feature, and put on a soldier's coat. Over one shoulder, a gun. Over the other, a rolled thangka of Palden Lamo, the fierce protector of his lineage. A rifle and a goddess. Both on the back of a 23-year-old, walking out of his own palace in the dark, past crowds who had no idea, across the Kichu River in silence. Ahead of him, 3 weeks over the Himalaya to India. Behind him, everything. For the people he left behind, heirs of the monkey ancestor, the emperor, the goddess born from a tear. For them, that night meant one thing. Chenrezig had walked out of Tibet. His presence remained, Tibetans would say, in the mantras carved across the passes, in forms beyond any single lineage. But the throne Tibet had built for him, the seat his line had held for 3 centuries, emptied in a single night. The Potala still towers above Lhasa. Its throne became an absence. He crossed into India, and the lineage faced its greatest test, continuing without a country. What followed was quieter than the escape, and maybe more remarkable. In Dharamsala, in the Indian foothills, Tibetan exiles rebuilt, monasteries reconstructed from memory, schools preserving their language and religious education. The central Tibetan administration, keeping the institutions of a nation alive far from its territory. The one who never stops looking has now watched Tibet from the far side of the mountains for 67 years. He is 91. And the search that found him in a farmhouse may one day run a 15th time. 2 powers are already waiting at the door. (1995). The Dalai Lama recognizes a 6-year-old boy named Gedun Choki Nyima as the Panchen Lama, often described as second only to the Dalai Lama within the Gelug tradition, and traditionally involved in recognizing Dalai Lamas. 3 days later, the boy and his family disappear from public view. He has never been seen publicly again. Rights groups called him the world's youngest political prisoner. Chinese authorities rejected the recognition and used a state-controlled process to recognize another boy, Gyaltsen Norbu, in his place. Since then, 2 rival recognitions have carried the title. One remains missing. The other appears at state functions. The rehearsal already happened. 2007. Beijing issues State Religious Affairs Bureau Order No. 5, regulations on the reincarnation of what the law calls living Buddhas. The text is real, and it says this: reincarnating living Buddhas should carry out application and approval procedures. A state led by an officially atheist party, requiring reincarnation to pass through an approval process, with the most important cases escalating to the highest levels of the state. One future recognition carries consequences beyond every other name in that system. In March 2025, in a book published for his 90th year, the Dalai Lama wrote that his successor will be born in what he called the free world, outside Chinese control. Then, days before that birthday in July, he settled the larger question. The institution of the Dalai Lama will continue. The Godin Padrang Trust, the organization he established to preserve the institution, holds sole authority over the recognition process. The trust must work with leaders of the Tibetan Buddhist traditions and the lineage's protectors. In his words, no one else has any such authority to interfere. Beijing answered within hours. Any reincarnation, the government insists, must follow Chinese law, selected by drawing lots from a golden urn and approved by the central government. The process the 14th appointed claims the tradition, the lineage, and his explicit instruction. Beijing claims the law and holds the territory. The conflict could produce two rival claimants, one recognized through that process, one approved by Beijing, each presented on opposite sides of a border as the continuation of the same being. And remember the detail from earlier, Tibetan doctrine leaves open more possibilities than outsiders realize, including, in theory, an emanation appearing before the predecessor's death. Two empty thrones side by side. Chenrezig has survived translation and mountains, empire, and exile. Now the watcher faces a rival who claims the right to decide which eyes he looks through next. Chenrezig, the one who looks with an unwavering eye. Empires legislate, borders close. A throne above Lhasa sits empty, and a boy who disappeared at 6 and would now be in his late 30s remains unseen. Through all of it, the name makes a quiet promise. The looking doesn't stop. And maybe that's the teaching hiding inside this whole story. Attention is where compassion begins. You have to remain present long enough to see what another being actually needs. And then, like the 1,000 arms, seeing has to become reaching. The shattered head, the 1,000 hands that followed. Every image in this story points at the same discipline. You don't need a thangka on your wall to practice it. Tonight, when suffering appears in front of you, a friend whose pain makes you uncomfortable, a stranger everyone else has learned to look past, the question Chenrezig poses is simple. Can your attention stay present? As for Tibet, the story remains unfinished. Someday a successor may be recognized, perhaps through one process, perhaps through two competing ones. A government may be able to appoint a child. But can it appoint compassion? Stay curious, stay wise.